meeting of Education Innovation will come to order. I think we have quorum. You sure? Quorum is present, and so we are officially to order. This is March 13th, 2018, and as I said, this is Education Innovation Policy. Our first business this morning is looking at the minutes. There is a technical correction. So I would like to point out to members that we will correct the spelling of Grace Kelleher. Grace, our apologies to you. We misspelled your last name, but we found that right away. So we'll correct that. So are there any other additions? I think I'll ask Representative Christensen, would you move the minutes for approval?
Madam Chair, I move the minutes.
So Representative Christensen has moved the minutes officially, even though I interjected that we have a technical change. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and the minutes for March 8th are approved. Members, the first business that I want us to transact this morning is to move House File 2768, our child sexual abuse prevention instruction that was co-authored by Representative Jessup and Representative Pryor, and I'd like to move that to the General Register. Why this came to mind is that Girls United worked so hard to bring this proposal to us, and I think for them to have a special signing ceremony with the governor would be just the right thing to do to recognize how hard they worked on this. So with that in mind, I would like to move that 2768 be referred to the General Register. Is there any discussion? Representative Pryor.
Just to say thank you, Madam Chair. I know.
And you're most welcome. We need to thank Girls United because they have done
so much
extraordinary work in bringing this issue to us. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the chair renews the motion that 2768 be placed on the General Register. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and 2768 will be placed on the General Register. And our thanks again to Girls United and all those who worked so hard. And here comes Representative Jessup. We just moved your bill to the General Register. So Representative Pryor spoke with gratitude. So we are glad about that. Welcome to our testifiers today, members. Representative Barr, would you move this bill as well? Representative Barr moves 3370 to be referred to the Committee on Civil Law. Representative Barr, did you want to say anything?
Oh, there we go.
Will you move Amendment A1 as well?
I move Amendment A1.
So Representative Barr has moved 3370. It's a bill about school safety, particularly about threat assessment teams, and he has moved the amendment A1, which members adds the private data that could be collected between law enforcement and county human services if these folks would serve on the threat assessment team. It protects the data that would be shared. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment is adopted. And Representative Barr, would you also move the A18-0603 amendment? This is an appropriation that Representative Franke would like. So any discussion on that? Representative Barr, you will move that? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move the A18 amendment.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Representative Franke, welcome to our committee. I'm speeding along here because we have so much to do today, but welcome to the committee. This is your first time here. Members, he's even brought treats, so enjoy that. Representative Franke, introduce yourself to the committee and also those who are with you today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Keith Franke, District 54A. I'm here presenting House File 3370. I have with me 3 testifiers: Sergeant Randy McAllister of the Cottage Grove Police Department, John Geibel, he's a corporate threat assessment specialist, and Chris Kinlan, she is a forensic psychologist.
So Representative Barr, would you just give us the high-level overview of what 3370 as amended really it proposes to do? Representative Franke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill requires school districts to establish threat assessment teams within their districts, requires the teams to assess and intervene when individuals may pose a threat to safety. Breaking it down a little bit, the threat assessment teams, it defines what the members of the threat assessment teams will be, what their duties will be, how records will be handled and reported back to the superintendent and also possibly the school boards, and then setting up an oversight committee of the membership and the reporting. That's a basic breakdown of the bill. It's all about keeping our kids safe.
Very good, Representative Franke. And let's go to your first testifier. Please introduce yourself for the record. Welcome, and then proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you. My name is Randy McAllister. I'm a detective sergeant with Cottage Grove Police Department. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and probably more importantly, I've been a member of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals for 8 years because I'd much rather prevent violence than respond to it if I can. I'm also one of the first 24 people in the country to become a certified threat manager through the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. So we're obviously here today in response to the tragic school shooting in Florida on this past Valentine's Day, and because we realize that we need to do a better job of protecting our children from these kinds of events. I want to talk a little bit about what the research shows and where this field has been going. In 2015, the Federal Bureau of Investigations held a symposium and brought together academic researchers, mental health experts, and law enforcement experts to discuss the active shooter phenomenon with specific focus on prevention strategies. By far, the most valuable prevention strategy identified was the threat assessment and management team. The findings of the symposium were published under the title, Making Prevention a Reality, Identifying, Assessing, and Managing the Threat of Target Attacks. And that's available for free as a download on the FBI's website. So what is threat assessment and management? It is the process or method of identifying, assessing, and managing the risk of future planned violence. It is evidence-based, and it has become widely accepted as a gold standard and standard of care for targeted violence prevention. It is not punitive in nature, nor is it profiling. In fact, it is the opposite of profiling. It looks at observable behaviors identified through years of research and other risk factors to help the assessor identify persons at higher risk for violence or moving towards a violent act in order to deflect them away from that pathway to violence. Threat assessment has been around since longer than 2015, yet many criminal justice systems and school districts in the U.S. have failed to adopt threat assessment and management as a formal day-to-day strategy for preventing violence. After the Columbine shooting in 1999, the U.S. Secret Service and the U.S. Department of Education looked at 26 years of data on school shootings in America. Their study was published in 2002 as the final report and findings of the Safe School Initiative. Since this landmark study, a multitude of other researchers have also looked at target violence in schools and discovered that target violence is a process carried out over time with unique warning behaviors. The Safe School study and multiple other experts have recommended K through 12 behavioral threat assessment teams and programs as a best practice standard of care to prevent the kind of school shootings we saw in Columbine and more recently in Florida. I will also add that 95% of these school shooters in the study were in fact current students, so they had easy access to the schools. In other words, it was normal for them to be there. They would typically go unchallenged, et cetera, et cetera. In these situations, adding expensive physical security measures, though important, such as cameras and locked doors, is going to do very little to stop these kinds of attacks. Columbine certainly proved this, as have many other incidents since then. The authors concluded again as far back as 2002 that many of these attacks may have been preventable, and the best tool for preventing these sorts of attacks are trained threat assessment teams and formalized threat assessment processes. Fast forward a little bit to the mass shooting at Virginia Tech in 2007. This resulted in a top-down assessment of violence prevention at Virginia Tech and concluded in a report to the Virginia governor that the incident should have been preventable because multiple people at Virginia Tech in multiple specialties and positions recognized red flag behaviors. What they lacked was a system that could help them connect the dots and assess for violence risk. Also, there were unreasonable fears and misunderstandings of federal laws such as FERPA and HIPAA that led to people not sharing information even when they were allowed to do so under these laws. Essentially, each part of the university operated its own silo of information. It has been said in order to connect the dots, you have to collect the dots. A formal and robust multidisciplinary threat assessment system helps you do this better, be it higher education or K-12. A quick comment on FERPA. FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, does in fact allow the sharing of personally identifiable information within the context of a threat assessment team. And the U.S. Department of Education has released Dear Colleague letters or memos to this effect and explicitly supporting the establishment of multidisciplinary threat assessment teams in all levels of education. There are school districts in Minnesota which have threat assessment policies and teams. However, in my experience and through informal conversations, I believe that many times these teams are not formally trained. They are ad hoc in nature, or they fail to follow the guidelines put forth by the U.S. Department of Education and others. So in short, they do not operate consistent with accepted threat assessment best practices. House File 3370 would require all Minnesota school districts to establish multidisciplinary threat assessment teams in their districts and would require the participation of counseling, mental health, school administration, and law enforcement in accordance with accepted best practices. We also know that medical conditions, mental health factors, and past criminal behavior can contribute to future violence risk. For this reason, the language explicitly allows for the sharing of health records which are maintained by a school district. So that's important to understand, not outside health records, but school records maintained by a school district. And the sharing of criminal histories within the context of the formal threat assessment team. It also explicitly forbids members from sharing this information outside of the threat assessment team. So there are confidentiality protections there. It should be noted that medical and mental health records held by a school district fall under FERPA and not HIPAA, and as such are considered educational records. FERPA allows the sharing of this information to school officials with an educational interest, and threat assessment teams have been explicitly mentioned by the U.S. Department of Education as having an educational interest. Ideally, HF 3370, if passed, would be accompanied by funding to contract for development of model policies, procedures, and guidelines, and pay for statewide training so that school districts have a clear map for implementing successful threat assessment programs that are consistent with best practices and are evidence-based. I thank you very much for your time and your attention to this important bill.
Thank you, Sergeant McAllister. That was very informative. Members, are there questions for the Sergeant? Representative Berdahl.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am.
You better thank Representative Franke for that nice pastry you just ate.
It's not quite done yet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry I interrupted you while you were chewing.
No, I was already
could have
screwing
followed
up what I was going to say. I don't know if this maybe is more for Representative Franke, but on these threat assessment teams, which I think is a good idea, but one of the concerns that I have is the number of mental health professionals that we have in schools that available to this, and also the number of counselors that are available for this. Can you foresee any adjustments that would raise Minnesota from literally the basement in terms of per capita counselors?
Representative Franke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Berdahl. Well, to start, we are asking for an appropriation to get the training done. And then I know that the governor's office has reached out, and they're not completely out of bounds with this. So you know, what it all boils down to is the dollars. And I'm hoping that we can get some additional money to our schools to help bolster those professionals within our schools so that they can be more effective in serving on these threat assessment teams. But currently, as it's written, they're going to have to work with what they have to start and just get the training, but always for adding extra professionals in these areas because they are definitely needed in our school districts.
Representative Erdahl,
Just
follow-up.
finishing up, thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Certainly, this brings more focus on the need in our schools in Minnesota to, especially in light of current events, to have more healthcare professionals and more counselors, and hopefully that recognition can become more widespread.
Representative Erdahl, just a point of information. In statute, counselors are only to counsel in regard to college preparation or future plans. So we might have to take a closer look at what's in statute, because it does not direct counselors to do this kind of activity that we are now going to be expected. I think they can, but not by statute. Is that in place yet? So we may have to examine that. Representative Bennett is next. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Franke, for bringing this forward. I think it's a great idea. I have similar questions online of Representative Erdahl. Just wondering, probably this would involve social workers and school social workers and that type of thing. But for smaller school districts, would the school safety teams here, threat assessment teams, be able to share personnel? Is this something that smaller districts could even have a district threat assessment team instead of per school? I'm just thinking a lot of districts, with smaller schools and so on, it would make more sense to have a district threat assessment team.
Representative Franke, you want to take that one?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Bennett, yes, if you look at the overview, it does say per school, but I believe the bill language is directed at school districts.
Yes.
So they have the ability to share. We didn't want to put that burden upon each individual school. We wanted to broaden that for the ability for that flexibility. So I believe that's how the bill's written. The language in the bill, not per school, it's per district.
Sergeant McAllister, would you like to address that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Franke is correct. The way the statute is currently written, it essentially suggests a threat assessment team for every school. However, a district may use the same threat assessment team for multiple schools. So I think you could easily just establish, if you're a smaller district, establish one team for the entire district.
Madam
Representative
Chair,
Bennett?
and just the comment, I think that's a good idea, especially in our rural schools that aren't as large, and having a district threat assessment team probably would make more sense, and then the schools could feed into that somehow. So thank you.
Representative Pryor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to understand better how the privacy issues are getting worked out. So from what was explained, it's within the school, you can share the information. But I also know that counselors or mental health professionals are mandatory reporters. And, now I'm kind of in an area where I only know a very small amount of things. Can you elaborate on how working with other professionals, if they can be part of this assessment team too, or providing information?
Great. Madam Chair and Representative Pryor.
Sergeant McAllister.
Oh, sorry. And one of our other colleagues will be addressing some of those issues too, but the way if a district is running a threat assessment team the way they probably should be, you build policies around that information sharing and confidentiality as well. And it's not in the statute per se, but districts still have to, put something in writing. Again, FERPA is the law that comes up frequently as an excuse for people not to share information, but FERPA explicitly allows us sharing information in emergency situations, and the U.S. Department of Education has put out, like I said, Dear Colleague letters, which are sort of letters to educational professionals to explain federal law, and explicitly they mention threat assessment teams and the value and the fact that any member of a threat assessment team can have access to that personally identifiable information held by a district as long as they're deemed as an official with an educational interest. So that would probably be best put into district's policy, stating that, like law enforcement, if the school resource officer is on a team, they would be deemed an official with an educational interest, so they're covered under FERPA. And that's the counseling that FERPA is U.S. Department of Education that has actually put out. So,
Representative Pryor? I'm going to ask Ms. Para to cite 121A.0351 as it's the cross-reference in the amendment we adopted under Chapter 13. So there's this education code cross-reference. I'll come back to you. It's 121A.0351. It's stated in the amendment. Ms. Para?
Madam Chair, that's the new coding for the statute. So,
Okay, so it refers back to this.
yes, to the bill.
Very good, thank you. And this would be Chapter 13, then our state data privacy code that this would be covered in. Other questions for Sergeant McAllister? Representative Mariani?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Sergeant, thank you for being here today. I apologize, I missed a part of your testimony. I'm curious about protocols under these teams, in particular as they relate to subjective calls in terms of determining things like what aberrant behavior would be. There's other language here of disruptive behavior, threat would probably be clearer for folks, but can you share a little bit with us about what protocols exist to ensure that we don't have discriminatory subjective decisions making a determination about a student's behavior that might land the student then under the scope of this team's assessment?
Sergeant McAllister, is it time yet for us to turn to Mr. Geibel, or can you take that one?
yeah, actually, I think our other Dr. Keeneland can probably answer that too, maybe even better than I can.
So we'll hold off on that until she comes to testify. Thank you. Mr. Geibel, do you want to introduce yourself and state your testimony? And Representative Ward, I will get to you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I want to thank you for the consideration of this bill and for allowing us to testify this morning. My name is John Giebel. I was a police officer for the city of St. Louis Park for 10 years, 3 of those years as a sergeant. I spent part of my time as a police officer working as a DARE officer and a school liaison officer. For the last 15 years, I've worked at Target Corporation and Boston Scientific as a global workplace violence and threat assessment manager, where I built threat assessment teams and workplace violence programs from the ground up at both of those corporations. I've experienced a lot over the last 25 years, and I've seen firsthand the devastation inflicted by humans. The lifelong psychological damage that comes with each of these situations does not just impact the victim. As you know, it's very far-reaching. You and I are no different. We are passionate about education. We care about our students and staff within our schools. We want to change our schools so our children can learn in an environment that is safe and feels safe. I'm here today because together all of us can make that change. I want to walk you through what a threat assessment team looks like from a business standpoint. A threat assessment team is a proactive approach to addressing the issue of violence. It can be defined in many ways, but very simply put, a threat assessment team is a violence prevention strategy that involves, number 1, identifying threats to commit a violent act, 2, determining the seriousness of the threat, and 3, developing intervention plans that protect potential victims. A formal, multidisciplinary threat assessment team is one of an organization's most valuable resources in helping to address a wide variety of threats. It creates consistency through policies and best practices, and it has accountability that all situations are dealt with appropriately, fairly, by a highly trained team. In a school setting, a threat assessment team is not going to be much different than it would be in a business setting. A typical threat assessment team focuses on many aspects of violence, which include active shooters, bullying and harassment, domestic violence, stalking, and threats of self-harm and suicide. A threat assessment team in general is comprised of the following types of roles. There's a process guardian that has overall oversight. There's a threat assessment team leader. There are members of security, employee relations, human resources, and our legal teams. There are also subject matter experts that are experts in domestic violence, stalking, and suicide prevention. And there are also psychologists that are part of the subject matter expert team. So this is what a typical process looks like when there is a threat that comes before the threat assessment team. The threat assessment team leader is made aware of a threat and gathers initial information to assess the seriousness of the threat. If the threat is determined to be high risk, the team leader immediately contacts the threat assessment team for a meeting. After the initial meeting, there typically is additional information that's required. We look at background checks. We look at social media activity and monitor that. There are disciplinary records and annual reviews that are reviewed. There's information about home life that's gathered. Are there stressors or triggers that are occurring? Loss of a job, financial issues, marital status, medical issues, sick children, etc. And many interviews take place with people who know these individuals so we can better understand the situation that they're in. The threat assessment team then regroups and goes over new information, and a series of mitigation actions are then put into place. A review of the mitigation efforts occurs shortly after implementation to measure the impact. If the efforts are working, we'll continue with the plan. If they're not working, we'll go right back to the beginning and start over. Other roles of a threat management team, they're responsible for the education and training of all employees. There's a steering committee that provides accountability, oversight, leadership, and guidance for the threat assessment team. There are annual and quarterly metrics that are created, and there's lessons learned that we share with other threat assessment teams who are always learning from each other. There's also a comprehensive website that has a bunch of resources that are available for all threat assessment teams, and that would be for, in your case, for all educators as well. So I want to walk you through an example of one of the threats that my team has worked through. An employee reported that another employee had made some disturbing comments to her. The comments he made pertained to shooting this employee and her entire family and skinning her baby alive in front of her. The subject was also accusing this employee of trying to talk him into bringing a gun to work and to shoot employees and the police when they responded. It was reported that he had recently withdrawn from others at work and his personality had changed drastically. When I interviewed the subject, it was clear that he posed a significant threat. He confirms the statements that were made. He claimed to hear voices and said his coworker was trying to get him to react violently. I learned that he owned an AR-15 among other guns and he practiced shooting on a regular basis. He was recently turned down for a promotion, and additional changes at work caused him to build resentment against others. Our subject matter expert, who is a forensic psychologist, conducted a forensic psychological evaluation. She diagnosed the subject as being psychotic, paranoid, and delusional, and stated that there was a high risk of a workplace violence incident occurring. So that's just one example of the types of situations that come before threat assessment teams. In closing, I want to thank you for allowing me to testify on this important opportunity before you today. Tomorrow, students across the nation will participate in a planned school walkout. They will sit outside for 17 minutes, 1 minute for each soul that was lost on February 14th. Students in this state, including 3 of my own in District 194, will be participating. These students are trying to make a difference. They're trying to make a statement and initiate real change. This very committee can be a catalyst for real change that's meaningful and impactful. So for the sake of our children and our educators in our schools across the state, I ask you to please approve this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gable. Do you have an example of how this has worked within a school from any of your experiences that you've been told about?
You know, there were situations that I had to deal with as a DARE officer and a school liaison officer. The difference would be those who play a role in the threat assessment team. We talked about school psychologists before. Someone had mentioned that would be an ideal person to be playing a role. They did play a role in some of those situations. You'd have your school liaison officer that's there. And I would highly recommend the subject matter experts that are available to you, bringing those on board as well. I don't have anything specific that I could share with you at this time.
Representative Ward, was your question for? I'll wait until. Okay. Are there questions for Mr. Giebel? Representative Mariani?
Was this the gentleman that was referred to?
No, she's coming forward now.
If I could ask the question.
Please,
Thank you,
yes,
Madam Chair.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, sir, for being with us here today. I was caught by the several things you shared, including I guess what I would describe as the need to have a highly trained team. One of the things that we often do, I believe here, is that we set out all sorts of expectations, which are high expectations, but I worry about whether that lands out in the broader field with the capacity to be able to deliver on those expectations. For us, we particularly struggle with the fact that we're severely under-personed when it comes to certain types of supportive personnel inside our school districts. Can you share a little bit with us about your experience with being able to access in a timely and a high way, a high level way, the appropriate mix of individuals that can conduct a highly expert team? Is that difficult to do in your sense out in the broader field? I don't mean doing the work, but I mean identifying and having access to appropriate numbers of professionals to do that kind of work.
Mr. Giebel?
Thank you. The threat assessment team, there's a lot of threat assessment teams and professionals that are out among us. And as we're building policies and best practices on how to establish and build out a threat assessment team, we can build in the type of training that's needed. I am also a member of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, where they provide a significant amount of training and resources that are available to you. One of the things that's very important is ahead of time, you need to establish the subject matter experts that are available to you for those situations that need specialization and additional information. So it has much to do with how it's structured. You can specifically work with law enforcement. Randy, for Sergeant McAllister, for example, is one of those who's highly trained from a law enforcement standpoint and is working on training other police officers as well.
Representative Mariani?
Madam Chair, and you reference a comprehensive website where I suspect there's protocols and advice and guidance. Is that something you can share with us so we can take a look at that?
Mr.
Yeah.
Giebel?
Yes, in the private sector, we built out a website both at Target Corporation and at Boston Scientific. We took our legal teams as a partner. We're very careful about PII, as you guys had mentioned, that's shared back and forth. But we have internal and external resources that are on those websites that may be benefits or EAP from a business standpoint, and then all subject matter experts that are outside of our business. There is training curriculum that is on there as well. There's best practices, there's policies that are on there, there's videos that are on there, FAQs. It's really, we call it a one-stop shop for all employees and threat assessors. It also walks you through specifically how to deal with a threat, how to report a threat, whether you contact through a hotline, who are your key contacts, et cetera. So it's an information source for those who are not as familiar with threat assessment as the threat assessment team members are.
Representative Mariani. Yes.
Yes.
You'll do it.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Franke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Mariani, we'll be happy to get you that information. There's several websites that I've been looking at and doing some research on that I think pull some really good information, and some that do specifically speak more to school systems or all of the above, whether it's has to do with the threat assessment group they're part of, or even other threat assessment groups that provide corporate and school training. So I can get that information out to the committee.
Thank you, Representative Franke. Representative May Quaid, is this a question for Mr. Giebel?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just over in 196, so it's good to have a neighbor here. You mentioned the students who are doing their walkout tomorrow. They're doing them on 196 as well. Is this something that those students have asked for?
Mr. Giebel? I don't know if you can answer that.
I can't answer that specifically, but what I can say is that these students are looking for change, they're looking for something to be different, something that's going to make them feel more safe. And what I can tell you is threat assessment teams are very proactive. And there is no doubt in my mind that situations like what occurred in Florida can be mitigated if you have a proper threat assessment team established.
Representative Makewaite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for that. I think one of the things I'm looking at here in this bill is the inclusion of possibly a juvenile prosecutor. So I was in middle school when Columbine happened, and so we got all the school resource officers, and what we have seen is that this has increased the school-to-prison pipeline. And I'm really worried about, you talked a lot about the business that you did the threat assessment in. Children aren't in businesses, they're in schools, and they're not adults yet, they're not employees. And so what I'm hearing a lot of stuff that we would apply to adults, but not how we would apply to children. And that is a concern that I'm having right now.
Yeah.
Mr. Giebel?
What I can tell you is that the example I shared was how it's conducted in a business world. There would be some changes that need to be made in a school setting. However, some of these children are killing other children. And so some of those difficult questions need to be asked, and accountability needs to be there as well. So when it comes to the safety of other students, there are things that are going to be similar to the business world that we need to do in a school threat assessment setting as well.
Thank you, Mr. Giebel. We welcome to the table our next testifier, who's a forensic psychologist. Would you introduce yourself and begin your testimony?
Hi, my name is Dr. Christine Keeneland. I'm a forensic psychologist, and I'm also a threat management consultant. I consult with companies and primarily colleges. I have consulted with some high schools and middle schools. And I do want to reply to your comment you mentioned earlier because, of course, the threat assessment process is not meant to criminalize or be punitive. However, there are individuals who have violated a code of conduct where all kinds of attempts have been made to try to keep that person in compliance with rules and being in a safe environment and acting in a safe way in the school environment, and it can't be done. Some students have progressed to a point where they're violating laws and they become involved in the juvenile system. I am a forensic psychologist. I know the juvenile court system makes every effort to avoid locking a juvenile up for a long period of time. There are other interventions that they employ. So that was my response to your question. I would like to say that I'm also a mother, and I have children in elementary school and middle school. And one day, I was leaving the elementary school in Minneapolis, and I received a call from a threat assessment team at college level. And the situation was a student who had posted something on Snapchat suggesting a possible school shooting. And so while I was taking that call, I noticed that the elementary school was being evacuated, and all these elementary school kids were being led past my car and across the street to a safe place. And after my heart stopped pounding and I realized this was just a drill, I drove away and I thought, once the school is being evacuated or is in lockdown because of a school shooting, it's really too late because then there are deaths and injuries and hundreds, if not thousands, traumatized. And so what we really need is a preventative approach, and that is what the threat assessment approach is about, the threat assessment team approach. I'd like to walk you through the process a little more. The threat assessment team's responsibility, first off, is to portray the message to the whole school that we value a safe environment. It should be a culture free of threats and violence, and that includes students and employees. There are national standards for employees to have a safe work environment, and there are threat assessment teams across organizations, like Mr. Giebel mentioned, his company. We do value safety for our school employees as well. Currently, not as many schools have threat assessment teams in place. The colleges have surpassed K through 12. Since the Virginia Tech shootings, it became a gold standard for colleges to have threat assessment teams, and most do. However, most K through 12 schools do not. The team wants to encourage reporting of concerning behaviors, and it's a see something, say something kind of message. And sometimes people will over-report. It's the job of the threat assessment team to assess if there really is a threat, if an individual actually poses a threat of violence. Most individuals who engage in school shootings, school violence do not make direct verbal threats. Some of the estimates are less than 20%. However, the studies have found that most people who engage in this kind of targeted violence or school shootings actually have leaked information to others that this kind of violence may occur. And we want that information reported to the threat assessment team. Once the threat assessment team receives the threat, they need to work together to investigate and obtain as much information as possible about the person of concern. The person of concern may be from within the school setting, or it could be a threat from outside. So it could be a parent, a spouse of a teacher, or maybe even someone who has no relationship with the school anymore. It could be a former student, a former employee. Those are the difficult situations, and that's why it's so helpful to have law enforcement involved in the threat assessment team process. The idea is not to be punitive. The threat assessment teams do everything they can to help put supports in place for the person of concern. Many people who engage in threatening behaviors have no intention at all of actually being violent. There are many reasons people will engage in threatening behaviors. Maybe they're trying to show off. Maybe they're angry that day, or they're getting desperate. They're stressed out. There's abuse going on at home. There's all kinds of explanations. And the idea of the threat assessment team is to put supports in place in the school and outside of the school so that these people can be safe to return to the school environment or to be in the school environment. Sometimes those supports are long-term. Most often, the threat assessment teams can manage the situation internally. Infrequently, they need to consult with someone like me, a mental health professional who's trained in violence risk assessment and threat management. Sometimes the threat assessment team cannot determine how fixated the person is on violence. There are people who are extremely fixated on violence. They admire prior school shooters and they want to kill more people. Those are very disturbing cases, and part of the process is understanding their intentions to act violently, how much time they're spending on this, how much they're preparing, but also if they have mental health issues that may benefit from treatment. So those are the kinds of cases that come up less frequently, but where someone like me can be of assistance. Besides the outside mental health professional, it's important that the team consults with law enforcement and legal as needed, because we want to make sure that the school policies and laws are in compliance, and also that the student rights are being met. I do want to say that this can be done. It has been done. Virginia has developed model policies, procedures, and guidelines for K through 12 school threat assessment. And I highly recommend that if Minnesota passes this law and we start establishing and training threat management teams, that we don't start from scratch and that we take a look at this model from Virginia.
Thank you, Dr. Keeneland. Are there questions for her, Representative Erdahl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Doctor, this could be for you, could be for others as well. But first of all, I commend the students and those who are demonstrating their concerns in this. But there's another area that I'm wondering about regarding threat assessment teams identifying. And and the students themselves. And that is that since the studies that I have seen indicate that a large majority of those who commit school violence are victims of bullying, that will this identify those who are being bullied, those who are bullying? And another suggestion that I have to consider is that perhaps a student or students should be on the threat assessment team, because being within the school community, they maybe are more aware of threats than any other group could be.
Dr. Keeneland.
Well, first, to respond to the bullying issue, yes, the bullying may be reported by the person being bullied, or the bully may become apparent to others in the school who report it. One concern I personally have about bullying is that sometimes it is advanced to a repeated pattern of harassment that causes fear for safety and physical harm that has risen to the level of stalking, and that is not recognized. And so there's varying degrees of bullying, and sometimes that is a very appropriate situation for a threat management team to respond to. And then as far as a student on the team, I think that would be very difficult, because these are very intense situations. They can be highly stressful. You need the right personalities on the team to manage a situation where you're wondering if there could be a school shooting the next day. It takes problem solvers and people who can handle that kind of situation. I think the students could be more involved with some of the active bystander trainings that are occurring in college campuses, where they see something that happens, they stand up for the individual who's being harassed or mistreated, and then everyone needs to be actively thinking of reporting concerning situations.
Representative Erdahl, follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Doctor. I appreciate that. Again, it was just a half-baked thought that zipped through my mind, which happens from time to time here. But I just would, in a larger sense, encourage the students who are concerned about this to be more active within their own schools about reporting those who are being bullied and those who are bullying.
Dr. Keeneland.
One thing I have seen happen in the college settings, and it could happen in K through 12 schools, is being very clear with the policy, and that this is a culture that does not tolerate threats and violence. This is a safe environment. Please report. This is where you report. These are the people you can trust to report to. You will not be punished for reporting, those kinds of messages. And then there can be trainings that provide that message to the student body and to the employees.
Thank you.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is it Dr. Cable?
Keeneland.
Keelan, I apologize. Thank you. I do want to echo my good friend and colleague, Representative Erdahl, on his observation of the possible nexus with bullying and these kind of sometimes tragic outcomes. This legislature wrestled with creating an up-to-date bullying, assertive and aggressive, quite frankly, piece of legislation several years ago. And I like to think that that's moved us forward. And at some point, I'll interact with the Department of Education to see whether any kind of assessments have been made about the impact of that legislation relative to bullying incidents. I do want to also echo Representative Erdahl's respect and acknowledgement of the action of the students for their upcoming actions. I do want to, it's not the subject of today's conversation, I do have a question for you, Dr. Keelan, but I do want to observe that the students are asking for lots of things, including, quite frankly, different gun regulation laws in our society. But that's not the topic here before us. I don't know if you heard my prior question. I was concerned, I think you started your testimony by addressing that the whole purpose of the teams isn't to single out and to discriminate and to act in a highly, subjective, negative way for particular students. As I look at the language in the bill, I think perhaps, Representative Franke, we may want to be careful about what language we do use in the bill. Words like aberrant, for me, can become pretty quickly subjective. I don't know that there's a definition in state statute for aberrant, for instance. I think it's clear, when we talk about things like, or phrases like threatening behavior, that seems clear to me. So what I'm getting at really are sort of protocols, rubrics that are standard in this, I don't know if it's a field, but in this, area of work on the part of folks involved in threat assessments. And so perhaps, Dr. Keelan, you can say a little bit more to us about, and the prior testifier also shared within the private sector, this establishment or emerging establishment of some clear, strong protocols. And I'm particularly interested in those that minimize or eliminate highly subjective calls on the part of individuals. In a society where we're, quite frankly, there's a big gap in our racial and cultural understandings of one another, I could see where quote-unquote aberrant behavior might be defined by one person differently from another person simply by interacting with someone, a young person that's from a different racial cultural group. So maybe if you could say a little bit about that, and then I have a more specific question for you.
Dr. Keeneland.
Yes. When I was reading through Virginia's model policies and procedures, I didn't like that word either, aberrant. I think it's too vague and people could interpret it differently. I think we have to be careful to be open enough with the language, though, that people are not discouraged from reporting behaviors that they're concerned about. So really, I think of it as any behavior that raises concerns about potential violence in the schools or workplace. And there is, this is in no way meant to profile individuals. Profiling does not work. You're going to miss the dangerous people if you profile in any way. Unfortunately, given some of the media exposure people have experienced through the years, profiles have developed. Like, for example, the Columbine shooters and trench coats. And the threat assessment teams need to be really careful to make sure that they're not falling into those profiles, and I think that's part of what training addresses. I think the threat assessment teams definitely need training. There needs to be funding for that. And they're trained on focusing on behaviors, the risk factors that are significant for violence in school settings, and then the protective factors. What does the individual have going for them that may mitigate their risk? Do they have strong family support? Are they involved in activities that they greatly value? Do they have career goals, life goals, plans to go to college, a strong peer group, a positive peer group? Those are the things that balances out the assessment so that people are not profiling or going by their gut feelings that someone is dangerous.
Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Keelan. That's helpful to me. So, and this might also be for the prior witness as well. So part of what I'm trying to get my head around is what would be the scope and depth of the work of such teams. I'm hearing pretty clearly that looking at focusing in on the behavior of individuals, which may set off a red flag, which then, could create further inquiry about that individual's life, I guess. What about environmental factors? Would that also trigger a look at environmental factors? And I'll be just real, blunt. What about the environmental factor of easy access to firearms within the community? evidence of marketing to particular demographic of students that fits this individual's profile for access to firearms. Would that be within the scope of a threat assessment team, or is that left for someone else to do, and the only thing that the team will be looking at is just the specific behavioral attributes of that individual?
Dr. Keeneland.
One of the indicators that a case is higher risk is weapons access, fixation on weapons, and that could be knives, that could be firearms. I think it's pretty well known that there is easy access to weapons. Anything could be a weapon. We need to, as a threat assessment team in society, think about, are there other indications that this individual is a person of concern? Is this a person who is holding a grudge and is angry and wants to harm others because of that? Is this a person who is desperate and maybe even thinking of self-harm and thinking they're okay with losing their life with carrying out violence towards others? You're looking at the whole person and not just the fact that there's weapons out there and they could obtain them. It's thinking about what is going on with this individual that may move them towards acting out violently towards others.
Madam Chair,
Representative Mariani.
and I'd love to keep up this conversation perhaps with you offline as well, because I'm actually really fascinated by this. And I think that we've got evidence, or we have instances in state law and our societal behavior where there are these broad, I'll use my terminology, broad comprehensive intervention in a proactive way, which could include, and often do include, addressing environmental factors. We have all sorts of laws that forbid, that set up parameters in terms of how far from a school certain types of activities can or cannot happen. It gets trickier once we start getting into issues of gun access in terms of First Amendment rights with, being able to market or whatever. But it does seem to me that an effective team would, at the very least, should at the very least be able to take all those holistic factors under consideration in order to develop an intervention strategy that might help an individual to overcome, heavy marketing influences, heavy cultural, subcultural, expectations related to whether it's access to drugs or access to guns for illicit purposes. So I'm fascinated by having a professional team of people that are using perhaps really a public health approach to understanding what's going on. That does include the individual, but certainly understands in public health that the individual is part of an ecosystem that influences and shapes their behaviors as well. So I thank you for your testimony here today. Thank you for the reference to the Virginia model. I'll take a look at that.
Representative Franke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Mariani, I'll be more than happy to work with you on some of that language. And I also wanted to state that, when you go to environment and the schools working versus the police and the availability, that recent situation that happened in Vadnais Heights, the school had kind of already deemed that as a situation that was kind of under control, so they thought, till the parents reached out to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office investigated further, and those are the gaps we're trying to close with this bill, is to create that communication. So gratefully that the sheriff's office stepped in immediately and stopped that situation before it got any further. But with those access to weapons and the availability, and then the school thinking that it had already been handled, so we are trying to close those gaps and hopefully take into account the environment around that and be able to take all those factors into account when the teams are making these discussions. At least that's my hope, Representative Mariani.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in the interest of time, I'll try to be really focused and brief. I would like to go back to Representative Erdahl's comment about including students in the development of an assessment team and what to look for. I had a group of students who were among the protesters this last week, came to visit in the Capitol and sat down, and they had some amazing ideas about what's wrong with the way we already do it. From the students' perspective, they're living it. And we as adults tend to say, oh, here's the good answer, well, let's do this. And I think we're going to be missing a lot if we don't include the students, at least in the development and perhaps review of our plans periodically. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Giebel, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a place for the students to participate in the building of what this could look like. As far as them sitting on the actual threat management team, I would not recommend that. But to your point, them having a role in helping us to see what life really is like, that is absolutely right on. I 100% support that.
Representative Jessup, last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be a quick question. Going through some of the reading and so forth, I was very impressed, and I just want to say a thank you to Representative Franke for bringing this bill forward. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Your communication and counsel here has been greatly appreciated. My one question is, we are focused really right here upon K through 12, the threat assessment team, and yet we do know we had that situation at Virginia Tech, which certainly it seems like propelled Virginia as a state to really assess this matter and to take some actions. And my question is in Minnesota, do we have any institutions of higher education that we know of that have a threat assessment team in place?
Dr. Keeneland, I know you know the answer.
I think most institutions do have threat assessment teams in higher education now. I would be in support of mandating it. I think because most do have it, that wasn't the focus here. And one thing I would like to comment on is if they don't have threat assessment teams, they're doing this already ad hoc because these situations are coming up and they're pulling the people together that need to manage the situation. And our emphasis is making sure people are trained and have an organized process to do this.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Keeneland and Mr. Giebel and Sergeant McAllister for sharing time with us today to give us great insight into this kind of proposal. There are others who'd like to testify. MSBA, Ms. Kelleher, would you like to come forward? So I guess I'll ask you testifiers to vacate.
Okay, thank you very
Representative Franke, you stay right there. But thank you very, very much for coming. Mr. Arnson, join us. You know the routine. Please say your name for the record and begin. Ms. Kelleher.
Madam Chairman and members, my name is Grace Kelleher, and I represent the Minnesota School Boards Association. And we have not had an opportunity to talk to Representative Franke, and I want you to know our commitment to working with him going forward. I'll just be very, very quick. There are a few things as you went through the bill that came forward to us, and that's the difference between a very small school district and a large. And I think that talks about who's available to be on these teams. So I think you've got to decide how to work in those parameters. We're interested in what constitutes a threat, and that's not really spelled out anyplace here. And we're interested too in how you get off the threat list. Do you ever get off the threat list? And last but not least, we feel very, very strongly that this is a good idea. It's got potential. You can see it coming forward, but we would suggest doing a pilot around the state, big, small, and middle, and then we can learn from their best practices before we make the school districts every school adopt these statewide. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kelleher. Welcome, Mr. Arnson. Please say your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm Roger Arnson. I represent the Elementary and Secondary Principal Association, and we really appreciate the bill and the complex discussion here. One of the things we'd like you to think about is the effective date on this bill, and I think Grace referenced this, but we have some school districts who are deep into this process and do this very, very well at the moment. We have a lot of other folks, as you heard from the testimony here today, that don't do this at all. So if you think about the prospect of trying to have a threat assessment team up and going in every school district. And I think one of the last witnesses said what we really need to do is to have a trained and organized process. We might talk about some language in here that gives us some opportunity to implement this in the 18-19 school year, not have the expectation that it was all ready to go on day one. There's a lot of coordination of professionals that you're looking at here, and it's going to take a lot to do that. And I think if we do this slowly and deliberatively, we're going to reap the results that you want to get from this. One of the things, too, I think we need to think about a little bit of what's the interaction with the IEP teams and the threat assessment teams, and what's the overlap with special ed law and the new law that we're creating here. I think your other witnesses could probably tell you, I mean, you hear this relatively often of autism and folks that are on IEPs that become involved in the threat process. And we need guidance on those types of issues. I mean, to the extent that we have firewalled off special ed and data in those areas and IEP teams, we'll need some implementation issues on that as well. And I think what Grace is referencing too is a lot of what's driving your policy here is the phrase school shooting. And it's just a horrible event, and we all know that. But the standard in here is threat to safety, which is an awful lot lower standard. And so you're going to look at these committees that are assessing a lot of other factors here other than is this person a threatened shooter. And this is complex stuff. Really appreciate the amendment that says we can share the data. I think that works very, very well. I mean, I think one of the good things, if anything else, about this is that we do have more people then that are involved in trying to get kids help that need help. I mean, that's really where we're at. So, Madam Chair, appreciate the bill. We'll keep working with you on this, and sorry to take up extra time. I know you're really crammed in here today.
Representative Kunesh-Podein, you have the last question.
No, thank you. You answered all my questions in that quick, short thing, so thanks much.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to testify to this proposal? Representative Franke, closing comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members, for taking the time and giving me the time to explain this. I just have a brief statement. You know, when the next school shooting happens at a school or an office building or a movie theater, the question will again be asked, what made this person snap? What could we have done? Virtually every one of these attacks is a predatory crime, methodically planned and executed. Therein lies the promise of a threat assessment. These weeks, months, or even years, when a would-be killer is escalating towards violence, a window of opportunity in which could have been detected and thwarted. With that, I appreciate your support in moving this forward. We do have some work to do, and I agree with that. We do have at least 2 more stops before this makes its final vote, so willing to take on all and any information to get this bill right, to get it done acceptably for all the stakeholders. So again, thank you for your time and thank you for your support.
And Representative Franke, thanks for the testifiers you brought in, because we needed to learn a lot about this concept, and you've provided us with that expertise, so thank you. With that, Representative Barr renews his motion that 3370 as amended be re-referred to the Committee on Civil Law. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and the bill is on its way to civil law. Thank you, Representative Franke.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Peterson. Representative Roz Peterson, your bill is up. Members, we have authors sitting in the audience waiting to have their bills heard. We have Representative Kunesh-Podein, who has one as well. So to the point that we can be succinct in our questioning and proceed will be very helpful for us. Representative Peterson, welcome to our committee. The chair moves 3178 to be re-referred to the Committee on Education Finance. And I do not believe, let's see. And the chair moves the A1 amendment. Members, what this would do to the proposal is ask that the commissioner examine how revisions to statewide assessments under Section 120B.30 impact school and district ratings. The commissioner may adjust school and district ratings according to maintain consistency in reporting. Because members, this is about a school and district performance rating. So, welcome again, Representative Peterson. Identify yourself for the record and give an explanation of your bill so we can move to your testifiers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for offering that amendment as well. House File 3178 is about summative ratings and improving family access to school and district information. We all know that information is critical and for helping us make our best decisions, including the biggest decisions we ever make, choosing the best school for our children. Fortunately, the state has a lot of great information about our schools and districts, ranging from student performance, overall and by student group, and to teachers and staffing ratios, to school districts and their budgets. This is critical information for families and the public as we try to find the best school for our children, or simply understand how their school and district is performing. Unfortunately, our state's practice is to put all this information on a website and let people try to figure it out on their own, even if this results in information overload. And putting all the information on a website doesn't necessarily make it understandable for parents. So few people go to the MDE's website to make the use of that information, but instead families tend to choose third-party vendors that use summative ratings like greatschools.org. And some of the challenges with simply going to greatschools.org is they take the test scores, but I kind of equate it to a Yelp review of how they think that school is performing. And wouldn't it make more sense to have a rating system that is actually data-driven, and also be a little bit more transparent and based on key student outcomes? For example, elementary and middle school ratings described on lines 6.6 through 6.14 are based on the percentage of students reading and doing math at grade level. It also includes student academic growth and success in closing the student achievement gap. However, I am open to looking at other measures that might be useful for parents, such as English language learners, highly mobile students, and things of that nature, if the committee also agrees with that idea. For high schools, because they don't have growth data, the ratings substitute gaps in graduation rates by student groups and are described in lines 6.15 through 6.21. The ratings are also based on the world's best workforce, and based on these districts' performance on these student outcomes, the commissioner would give them a rating from 1 to 5 stars combined with a number rating from 0 to 100. So hopefully it can provide a little bit more in-depth look at, instead of just putting one simple measure on the school. We need to strike a balance between giving families and the public a meaningful and understandable place to start searching for schools and district information, as opposed to the MMR ratings that we used before ESSA and providing no summative ratings. With 89% of families saying school summative rating would help them make decisions regarding their school education, it's important we include summative ratings on the state's websites, as opposed to having families more limited information on those third-party rating sites. And this is just a starting point for families. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into a school district than just one summative rating, but there's a lot more detail that they can go into. And I think that I can speak for my own kids' elementary school where I live. It doesn't necessarily have the highest ratings, but it was definitely the best school for my kids. And I think that we've all had those similar type experiences of parents are looking for what kind of school environment works best for their children. But the key is to empower them and give parents the tools that they need so that they can do what's best for their children. And I do have a couple testifiers here, and I will, I don't know if you said that this is moving on, so you'll vote later with the amendment as well, or do you need to adopt the amendment, Madam Chair?
We did already adopt the amendment.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
I kind of breezed right through that.
All right, great.
Representative Mariani.
Madam Chair, I don't think that we did, and so you want to make sure that, we want to make sure that there is action.
Excuse me. Yes, we need to approve. I did move it, but we didn't approve it. And thank you, Representative Mariani, and thank you, Ms. Liffey. All those in favor of the A1 amendment, which was As I said earlier, the commissioner must examine how revisions impact school and district ratings. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion prevails, and the amendment is now officially adopted and a part of the bill. And I do want to remind members that we did have a school rating system 2005 through 2008. So this is not new ground for us. Welcome, Mr. Daniels. Did you want to proceed first and talk about this proposal?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Sellers. I serve as Executive Director of Ed Allies, which is a statewide education advocacy nonprofit partnering with schools, families, and communities to ensure that every young Minnesotan has access to a rigorous and engaging education. I appreciate the opportunity to very briefly testify this morning in support of summative school performance ratings. Our team has spent the past year speaking with parents, teachers, and partners from across the state, and a question we regularly field is, how are our schools doing? Minnesotans are hungry for clear, understandable information about how their local schools are performing. Representative Peterson mentioned that Minnesota collects a lot of information on student, school, and district performance, but this data is often hard to find, organize, or use. The result is that many families have a hard time knowing how well their school or district is doing and if their child's needs are being met. From an equity lens, this is especially true for families from traditionally underserved communities, such as those for whom English is not their first language or who may not be comfortable reading complicated charts or graphs. Concise, easy to understand ratings benefit the entire community by helping everyone understand how schools are doing in a clear and comparable way. Transparency for families means presenting school and district data in a way that allows users to quickly and easily compare school performance. Taking a number of data points and compiling them into a single rating will help families in the community answer that question: how are our schools doing? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. I stand corrected on my missing your name. Ms. Gadara, welcome to our committee. Please say your name for the record and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Amy Gadara. I am the president and CEO of the Data Quality Campaign, which is a national nonprofit advocacy organization based in Washington. But I happen to live here because I married a Minnesotan, and he insisted we raise our children here. And so I'm also a proud mom of 2 Minnesota high school students. And you'll hear me wearing both of these roles as I talk to you this morning. In both of these roles, both as a national expert on the role of information and changing the role of data and information in schools and in education writ large, and also my more important role as a mom, I'm a passionate believer in the power of data to inform better decision-making, to get better outcomes, and to literally change lives. But it's really important to remember as we talk about this bill that data is a tool. And in education, we have predominantly used data as a tool of compliance for a really long time, and that hasn't gotten much results. And we increasingly have used data as a tool of accountability, which is something I'm very, very supportive of. But oftentimes in those roles, data is seen more as a hammer, something that beats up people, that people are scared of, that people don't like. And I would argue that the real power of data is when we use it as a tool of empowerment, a tool of transparency. And that's what this bill is about. Because the only time that we really can use data for continuous improvement to empower people is when we put it into their own hands. And that's what this bill is about. It's about ensuring that we get data out of our state data warehouse and into the hands of people, especially people closest to our students, and making those decisions. I'm talking about getting in the hands of students, parents, teachers, administrators, taxpayers, and citizens. And when we have this greater clarity that this bill is pushing, which is about summative ratings, we are able then to use data not as a hammer, but as a flashlight. And when people have this flashlight of data in their hands, they can use it to shine a light on what's working and what's not working. They can use it to inform better decision-making, and they can use it to illuminate a path forward to better results and outcomes. Who doesn't want that in Minnesota? I know I do. So this bill is about transparency, and it's about empowerment, and it's about using the great data we already have. You just heard from both of the folks up here that we have some of the nation's greatest data. And I say this as someone who has, for the last 14 years, looked at every single state's data system. Minnesota has one of the richest and most robust data systems in education anywhere. Yeah. And yet what happens is, and we, our organization, the Data Quality Campaign, have given the state numerous awards and accolades for the ability to collect this data, this ability to connect it between post-secondary and K-12. We're one of the only states on our report card that actually presents information by school, not just on how many students are going on to post-secondary institutions, but also the persistent rates. We are a leader in this nation about how the data that we collect and how we analyze it. And yet I would say that we are one of the states furthest behind in ensuring that that valuable data is turned into information and gets into the hands of people who need it the most. And that's not very Minnesotan. We need to be the first in the nation on those things, and this bill will help us get there. Because one of the things that we're finding at the Data Quality Campaign as we listen to people is that summative ratings make a difference. It takes all of these data points, as Daniel just said, and turns it into more timely, actionable, and contextual information that they can use. And that's the point of data. It's to use it. It's not to admire it. It's not to put it on a website. It's not to just have it sit there. It's to inform people and to empower them to make the best decisions possible. And this is happening across the country. We know that 19 states right now are using summative ratings in their school report cards. And we know that that number is going to increase to 44 states that have said they are going to do that in their ESSA plans. And why are they doing this? They're doing this because people in their states are asking them, just like here in Minnesota and what Daniel said. We know from our Data Quality Campaign research, we've done a series of polls and surveys across the country, including here in Minnesota. 89% of parents said that they would find a summative rating helpful to them to make meaning out of the data points. Those are your constituents. They're telling you that they want these summative ratings. And I've put lots of information in your folders about this, presenting this research. But bottom line, this is a chance for you all to take the rich resources that we have in this state and leverage this data, turn it into information, and get in people's hands. And I'll close by using my parent role as an example. Like moms and dads across the state last night, I got on my computer after dinner and tried to manage the household. So in the midst of buying plane tickets, making a dinner reservation, I also went to check out Orono High School's ratings and how we looked on the school report card. That's where my kids go. And I won't need to tell you which of those three things was the hardest to do. It shouldn't be that hard. You know, the rest of our lives have been transformed by having data in our hands that allow us to make decisions that serve us better. There's no more important decision that I make every day than to support my kids and their school. And that's what this is about. This is about making sure that moms and dads and taxpayers and citizens can make sure that their schools are serving not only their own kids, but their community's kids. And you all have a chance to make a real difference in that. So I encourage you to support this bill. Thank you.
Representative Kunesh-Podein, do you have a question for Ms. Badera or Mr. Sellers?
No, I think it would be for the
For the
representative. Yeah, the author.
Are any of the questions from members that I have names written down for the testifiers? Okay, then we'll hold off. I'd like to hear from the Latino Youth Development Collaborative. Well, Mr. Erdahl, we'll just wait. We want to hear these from this collaborative group. It's Ms. Cisneros, Ms. Vega, and Ms. Torres. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
And I think we have an interpreter here? Yes. Yes, very good. Will they introduce themselves? Please say their names for the record.
Por favor, decir sus nombres.
My name is Victoria Torres.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Speak into the microphone. Tell her to. Yes.
Buenos días, mi nombre es María Cisneros.
Good morning, my name is Maria Cisneros.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Lizeth Vega.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Ms.
Great to have you here. So let's listen to the testimony of these three very important persons.
¿Quién empieza?
Buenos días, Madam Chair.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Hola, mi nombre es María Cisneros.
Hi, my name is Maria Cisneros.
Agradezco que mi voz sea escuchada,
I think that my voice can be heard,
así como la de otras familias de color.
as well as other families of color.
Vengo en representación del YDC,
I come representing the LYDC,
Colaborativa Latina para el Desarrollo Juvenil,
which is the collaborative of development of youth, Latin youth.
buscando afianzar el desarrollo para los jóvenes latinos.
We're looking to secure the development and of the youth, the Latin youth.
Hablamos de derecho que tienen el acceso y la educación de calidad.
We talk about the right they have to access to good quality education.
Fomentamos la participación de liderazgo.
We try to push forward leadership.
Brindamos el apoyo a las familias y realizamos abogacía.
We actually support the families and we provide advocacy for these families.
Hoy estoy aquí para hablar acerca de la urgencia
Today, I'm here to talk about something urgent.
que tenemos los padres y madres de familia al conocer sobre el rating de las escuelas.
The urgency that parents, mothers, and fathers have to be able to understand things about the ratings of the schools.
Durante la vida de nuestros niños, como promotores,
During the life of our children, as the advocates for them,
buscamos darles siempre lo mejor.
we always look to give them the best.
Y esto incluye darles las mejores herramientas.
And this means also give them the best tools.
En el ámbito escolar, esto lo logramos
In the school environment, we're able to do this
si todos tenemos la información
only if we have the correct information.
de parte de los medios oficiales,
Correct information from official means,
pero no cualquier información.
not any information.
Esta información debe ser clara, concisa y entendible.
This information should be clear, understandable, yes, and
Entendible.
and understandable.
Debe estar al alcance de todas las personas.
It must be at the reach of all the people.
En el programa El YDC
In the program of LYDC,
nos enseñan a navegar entre las diferentes opciones escolares,
they teach us how to navigate between the different options of school
buscar cuáles son las mejores posicionadas
and try to find which are the best positioned
y cuáles nos ayudan a incrementar el nivel académico de nuestros niños.
and which ones are able to increase best the academic level of our kids.
Sin embargo, muchos de estos casos
Nevertheless, a lot of cases,
nos tropezamos
we stumble
con la información
with the information
que es bastante difícil
which is very difficult
de encontrar.
to find.
Y cuando la encontramos,
And when we do find it,
solamente está en inglés
it's only in English.
y por lo tanto
And
muy poco útil para muchas familias.
Not very helpful for a lot of families.
Otra de las barreras
Another of the barriers
con las que nos topamos
with which we find against
tiene que ver con la negativa
has to do with negativity
y la mala práctica de las escuelas,
and the bad practices of the schools,
que en muchos de estos casos
which in many of these cases,
nos limitan
they limit
el derecho de elegir la escuela.
the rights that we have to choose our schools.
Nos dicen que la escuela
They tell us that the school
que se asigna
that is assigned to us,
conforme al área en la que vivimos,
depending on the area that we live,
cuando en realidad esto no debe de ser así.
when in reality it shouldn't be this way.
Exigimos
We demand
que las calificaciones
that the qualifications
de las escuelas públicas
of the public schools
sean entendibles
be understandable
y de fácil acceso.
and easy to access.
Como padres,
As parents,
podemos ver
we can see,
cómo están calificadas
we want to see how the schools are qualified,
cada una de las escuelas del Estado.
each one of the schools of the state,
Que la calificación
so that the qualifications
por la publicación,
and in these publications
hispanos,
come through for Hispanics,
blancos,
whites,
indios americanos,
Native Americans,
afroamericanos,
Afro-Americans, etc.
y que sea difundida por medios tecnológicos,
And that this information be diffused through technological means,
impresos,
printed,
boletines
and through school notices,
escolares, que esta información se exponga en lugares públicos
and that this information get placed in public places
y de mayor frecuencia.
and with greater more.
Si esto se logra, será una manera
If this happens, it will be a way
de forzar
to push
una mejor continua
a better continuous
a las escuelas
education in the schools
por el bien de todos nuestros niños.
for the good of all our kids.
Los padres necesitamos tener herramientas
We as parents need these tools,
como el School Funder,
like the School Finder
que nos ayuda a elegir
that helps us choose
entre diferentes opciones escolares.
between the different school options.
De las escuelas mejor calificadas
The better qualified schools
y los niveles académicos por población.
and the different academic levels for each population group.
La información de este pequeño libro es clara y entendible.
We need that this information, this small publication be clear and understandable.
Minnesota es uno de los mejores estados
Minnesota is one of the best states,
para vivir,
best states to live,
según se escucha en los medios
as we hear in the media.
y sus principales ciudades.
And its two principal cities
Son ciudades multiculturales.
are multicultural cities.
Ustedes están aquí para velar
You're here to oversee
que el progreso y la calidad de vida
that the progress and the quality of life
de nuestro estado se mantenga.
of our state may be maintained.
Las leyes de toda la historia de la humanidad
All the laws from history of humanity
y de todos los países
and from all the countries
sean adaptados
have been adapted
y evaluados
and have evolved
conforme las necesidades
based on the necessities
de la población.
of their populations.
Esta es una necesidad urgente.
This is an urgent necessity.
Ustedes están aquí
You are here
con la responsabilidad
with the responsibility
de que Minnesota siga avanzando
that Minnesota continues advancing
y siga siendo un estado de progreso
and continues being a state of progress
y oportunidades.
and opportunities.
Ahora tienen en sus manos el poder
Now you have in your hands the power
de brindar a cada familia
of giving each family
y la responsabilidad
their response and the responsibility
de elegir una escuela
and the possibility of choosing a school
de calidad para nuestros
of
niños.
quality for our children.
Cumplamos todo con estas responsabilidades. Gracias.
We should all meet our responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, sir, are the other testimonies about as long?
No.
Thank you. She was very, very good. Tell her that.
Muy bien, gracias. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muy buenos días, Madam Chair.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Estoy aquí para apoyar esta propuesta
I'm here to support this proposal,
y porque vengo a representar a todas las familias
and I come to represent all the families
que tienen hijos
that have sons
en las escuelas
and
públicas.
daughters in the public schools.
Queremos transparencia en la información
We want transparency in the information
que recibimos de las escuelas
that
públicas.
we receive through public schools.
Se han perdido generaciones de jóvenes
Generation of youth have been lost
que no se han graduado
that have not graduated
porque los padres no entendieron cómo utilizar la información
because the parents did not understand how to utilize the information
que había para apoyarlos a tener éxito.
information that was there to be able to support their success.
Nosotros queremos evaluar a nuestros hijos.
We would like to be able to evaluate our children.
¿Cómo es posible que en el portal de padres no haya información actualizada?
How can it be possible that in the parent portal, there's not current information?
Pedimos información clara y más entendible de las escuelas
We ask so that the information be clear, understandable from the schools,
para que los padres de familia se motiven a participar
so that parents can be motivated to participate,
y para que no se sientan que la información que hay
and that they don't feel that the information that is actually there
son jeroglíficos sin descifrar.
are hieroglyphics that can't be deciphered.
Queremos apoyar a nuestros hijos en sus tareas.
We would like to support our kids in their homework.
Queremos información sobre escuelas que sí brindan una buena educación
We want information about the schools that do produce good education,
para hacer nuestras decisiones para el futuro de nuestros hijos
to be able to make our decisions for the future of our kids,
y que las decisiones sean buenas.
and be able to make good decisions.
Pedimos que se nos informe
We ask that we be informed
si nuestros hijos están a nivel de grado,
if our kids are at the grade level,
pero con mucha anticipación antes de que nos den una sorpresa
and with a lot of anticipation before we're surprised
en el grado 12,
at 12th grade,
cuando ya casi están por terminar este grado
when they're about to finish this grade,
o en cualquier momento que terminen el año
or
escolar.
any time that they finish the school year.
Solicitamos que las escuelas públicas
We ask that the public schools
publiquen su información de los resultados académicos
publish their results of their information of academic information
en el correo que recibimos en casa
in the mail and information that we get at home,
o en un folleto especial como School Finder.
online, or in a booklet or bulletin that we get like School Finder.
que tenga información simplificada y clara de las escuelas públicas
and that they have simplified and clear information about public schools,
y que nosotros podamos entender.
something that we can actually understand.
Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you for your attention.
Somos padres preocupados por la educación de todos los niños.
We are parents that are worried about the education of our kids.
Yo personalmente tengo la confianza de que cada una de las familias
I personally have the trust and belief that each one of the families
recibirán esa información
will receive this information
a un nivel que lo entiendan
in an understandable level for us,
y de que ustedes van a resolver esto a una manera positiva
and that you guys will resolve this in a positive manner,
y van a tomar la mejor decisión
and that you will make the right decision
para el futuro de nuestros hijos.
for the future of our kids.
Una vez más, muchas gracias.
Once more, thank you very much.
And sir, would you have her say her name into the record, please?
Oh, mi nombre es Lisette Vega.
My name is Lisette Vega.
Yes, and I love passionate parents. This is so great. Thank you, Ms. Vega. That was wonderful.
Muchas gracias.
And our last testifier, sir, are you moving or interpreting from there?
Buenos días, Madam Chair.
Welcome to our committee. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name mi nombre es Victoria Torres.
My name is Victoria Torres.
Tengo 2 hijos.
I have 2 kids.
Vivo en Minneapolis.
I live in Minneapolis.
Vengo en representación de mi comunidad
I come here representing my community.
pidiendo que se le dé
I'm asking that you give
y se difunda
and diffuse
con transparencia
with transparency
la calificación a las escuelas,
the qualification of the schools,
clarificando sus servicios
clarifying their services
a las diferentes comunidades
to the different communities
en una forma abreviada y comprensible,
in a way that's brief and comprehensible,
sobre todo en español,
especially in Spanish,
y que se publique en el website
and that it's published in the website
de las escuelas,
of schools,
y que los padres
and that the parents
sepan que tienen el derecho
know that they have the right
a elegir escuela para sus
to
hijos.
choose the schools for their kids.
Lo digo por experiencia propia.
I say this because of my own experience.
Por no haber podido escoger escuela para mi hijo,
I was not able to choose a school for my son.
él anduvo de escuela en escuela
He went from school to school,
y casi siempre en las peores escuelas.
and usually in the worst schools.
Y ello le afectó al punto
And that affected him to such point
de que casi no se gradúa de high school.
that he almost did not graduate from high school.
Afortunadamente ahora él está en MCTC.
Fortunately, right now he's studying at MCTC.
La mayoría de las veces o casi siempre,
The majority of times, or almost always,
los niños latinos no se gradúan
Latin kids and youth does not graduate
porque nosotros los papás
because us as parents,
no tenemos la información clara y precisa
we do not have the clear information or the precise information,
y registramos a nuestros niños
and we register our kids
en las escuelas que nos asignan.
in the schools that they just assigned to us.
Y por lo general
And in general,
son las peores escuelas.
they're the worst schools,
Y eso es injusto.
and that's not just.
Y así como se evalúa a los estudiantes,
And just like we evaluate our students,
así se debería de evaluar a las escuelas.
we should also evaluate our schools.
Yo apoyo la propuesta
I support this proposal
de calificación a las escuelas
of qualifying the schools
porque eso sería lo justo
because that would be just
para las familias y los
for
estudiantes.
families and the students.
Continuamente escucho a mis compañeros
I continuously hear my peers
de trabajo,
at work,
en la iglesia
at church,
o en mis conocidos
or people I know,
confundidos
they're confused
por la falta de información.
because of the lack of information.
Muchas gracias por la oportunidad de expresarme aquí.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to express myself here before you.
Espero que nuestras voces
I hope our voices
se tengan en consideración
are considered
en las decisiones tan importantes
in these decisions which are so important
que ustedes hacen,
that you guys take,
no solamente hoy,
not just today,
sino siempre.
but always.
Ya que, aunque ustedes no vean,
Even though you might not see it,
realmente tienen el futuro de nuestros hijos
you
en sus
really
manos.
have the future of our kids in your hands.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Torres, Ms. Vega, and Ms. Cisneros. You are indeed very concerned parents, and I appreciate that so much, as do all of us, because we want our children to succeed. Yes, thank you. Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Y muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.
Testifiers, just stay in place.
Tengo
Representative Mariani can probably ask a question in the language.
Tengo unas breves preguntas, pero más que todo, antes que todo, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Yo traigo muchos años aquí y al principio no se veía ni un latino, ni un hispano en el Capitolio, y ahora tenemos ustedes y muchos otros y las voces que son bien importantes. Entonces, gracias. Es un honor tenerlos aquí.
Thank you.
That's okay. I'm basically just walking them here. I'm going to ask the question in English to my colleagues now. No. So one of the things that the bill does not have, is any indicator of how those who are learning English, many of our students in the Latino community, but also Asian and African communities, doesn't have any information in it about how they are progressing in learning academic English. Should, in your opinion, should that be part of such a rating system?
Claro que sí.
Of course, yes.
Sí.
Yes.
And Madam Chair,
Representative Mariani.
and the bill also does not have any measurement about whether a school is communicating to parents who are Spanish speakers, for instance, in their language. Should a rating system not have that kind of measurement about how a school is doing?
Absolutely, yes.
Sí,
Yes. 3 yeses.
definitivamente.
Definitely.
Claro que sí.
Of course, yes.
Madam Chair, and
Representative Mariani.
to the parents, there are many other questions I have about things that are not in the bill that I think you and I will probably agree should be in the bill if we're going to do this. But I'm not going to ask those questions. I think the important thing is that you're here with a very strong expectation that schools should be very clear with you about how they're doing with your students. And I think everyone around the table agrees with that. I think the issue for us is what is the best way to do that. And I look forward to working with you in the future, from here on out, to be able to figure out how to best do that. Thank you so much for being here.
Gracias.
What we would like is that we don't want just theory, we want, there's an urgent necessity of it actually happening, not just words.
I represent Mariani and others. I believe that Representative Peterson has been listening carefully, and I think it is something that's been talked about as far as ELL and the progress our children are making who speak a language other than English. Thank you again for being here. Members, our time has elapsed, and as you know, we reconvene in the Capitol 120 at 4 p.m. And so, members, my apologies to all of you who came. We led off with a very important bill today that we really needed to vet, and now we're in a second important bill. And so, members, this committee stands in recess until 4 p.m., Capitol 120.